Welcome to Built with Purpose. I am Chris Fay, and this is the show where vision meets execution and leadership leaves a legacy. From design studios to innovation hubs and product lines to skylines, we meet the people building more than great companies. They're creating culture, driving impact, and shaping what's next. These are the stories and strategies behind how the world gets built with purpose. All right. Well, awesome. Well, thanks everybody for taking some time today. Super excited for the conversation. My name's Chris Fay. I am the CEO of Treble and TPM as well. Today with me is a good buddy, Landon Messal. He is the founder and CEO of SiteMarker. And today we're just going to have some fun conversation with each other. And Landon, we were kind of joking around before this conversation started. This is actually our rerun. We had some technical difficulties the first time, but we can actually just call that a practice. So hey, dude, welcome to the conversation today. I'm fired up to have you here.
Yeah, man, glad to be back. Even though this is the first time anyone's hearing us, but yeah, I mean, great conversation. And I think everyone's in store for an enlightening conversation around, technology in the AEC space, advancements, challenges, and things like that. So always glad to unpack that with you.
Yeah, I think the scary thing about when Landon and I seem to get together is we have to have a timer because we tend to just start kind of getting into the details and chat. So today should be a fun conversation. So Landon, why don't I kind of just toss it off to you a little bit? Why don't you just give us some background on you and what you've been doing? Give us a little bit of information on SiteMarker, and then we kind of take it from there.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Chris. A little bit of background on myself. I'm a licensed civil engineer here in South Carolina. Got a degree in plant sciences from the University of Tennessee and an engineering degree from the Citadel. Was in the golf industry for a bit, and then finished my degree in engineering and quickly gravitated to technology in the engineering space. First with Civil 3D, becoming an expert in that, and then director of innovation for an engineering firm down here in Charleston. So I've got a wide background, but I think as my career has progressed, I think the breadth of knowledge I've learned across different industries is all starts to kind of align up. In my role as a director of innovation, just always looking for ways to kind of improve what we're doing on a daily basis. Sitting behind the screen and thinking, man, there's got to be a better way to do this. And then, being able to spend time to try to solve that has been super rewarding. And I think that concept of empowering those that live in the problem, whether you're a CEO of a firm, a team leader, there's nobody better suited to kind of solve the challenges of our industry than those that live in those challenges on a daily basis. And there's certainly big software companies out there that may be trying to solve them. Sometimes they might be adding to those problems, but I'm excited to see where the industry goes here in the next decade, particularly with this advent of AI and empowering people to solve problems they otherwise wouldn't have been able to start to solve. With things like Copilot and GPT and the ability to kind of solve them with technology and coding. I'm interested to see where it goes in the next 10 to 15 years because I think we're going to see a lot of people commit to this idea of being able to innovate, internally within firms, and then, evaluate whether they spin them out and send them along to the industry. So.
Yeah, I tell you, I mean, there's just a couple things that you said. That the first one is when you mentioned where you went to school. I had a little bit of PTSD because my school lost in the first round of March Madness last night. So that was not a fun experience. But I think on the tech side, man, I'd love for us to kind of dive into that today, like what we're seeing over the next few years and just how fast things are changing and how companies like ours need to be you're really embracing that technology. But I think also the other thing that you mentioned a little bit is being close to the problem, the people that are best suited to solve some of these problems, and the ones that are actually close to it and in it. And I think that you and I have very similar stories in how we started, how you started SiteMarker, and to some extent how I started Treble Hook. And coming out of the construction industry in the business development space, I've been leading TPM, which is a technology business, since 2011. So I understood tech and sales, and Treble Hook for me was kind of a blend of all of my experiences of being in the AEC space, understanding how projects are brought together, how to run and deploy tech. And so it's a unique value set that gave me the fortunate opportunity to be able to start a company on that. And I know you kind of had a very similar thing in how SiteMarker came about. Obviously you're probably working in your engineering firm, kind of an innovation side. Y'all are looking to solve a challenge. You're there experiencing it day to day. The pain points, what engineers, and that's kind of spun SiteMarker up. So tell us a little bit about like the starting of SiteMarker, how being close to the problem got you there, and kind of what y'all are doing.
Yeah, for sure. So, this dates back to like pre-COVID, where, particularly inside the land development industry, we go to the field, we go out on site from a land planning standpoint to understand what are the constraints of this particular site, such that when we come back to the office, we can put concept plans together that kind of ensure that a particular product can go on a particular piece of property, to give that owner confidence that we can actually bring this idea to life. You're walking out in the woods, you're often trying to figure out, you don't have many indicators of where you are at. And so we were using things like Google Maps, Google Earth, Avenza Maps to export AutoCAD line work to like, where are we in the world? But we were still left with taking pictures, handwritten notes of things that we needed to consider when we came back to the office. Fast forward in the life cycle of a project to construction management. The larger the project, the more critical context is. So we're walking around with our set of construction drawings, and we're making handwritten notes on those drawings, still taking pictures, then got to come back to the office and disseminate that information either internally or externally, whether those are weekly observation reports, like formal punch lists, things like that. And so we found ourselves using I think it was 15 different programs, at least a 10-page kind of SOP to say, this is how you go get information and bring it back to the office and then disseminate it. And it was there's got to be a better way to do this. So we're doing a little bit of research. You'd be like, is there something better out there that's solving this problem? And there wasn't. So we set out to create a familiar process. I think it's easy for me as the founder of a company to say my product is simple to use. I think it's a bit cliche. And so we set out to say, let's use familiar processes where people may not even be using it in their daily work, but inside their personal lives. Like everyone opens up a map and can find a restaurant in a city they're unfamiliar with. People send text messages with images in it. And in fact, that's probably one of the main ways people communicate without a platform like SiteMarker from a construction management standpoint. So let's take all of these things that are familiar and that we're already using and then package them up into a product. And so that's where SiteMarker came out of. It was we were using, again, Google Earth to know where we were at. We're taking pictures, handwritten notes. We're trying to figure out where we are on our set of plans. So we give you the ability, SiteMarker gives you the ability to walk around on your PDFs with a blue location puck on a document, take pictures, correlate notes with those pictures, statuses, categories, and then we've got an automated reporting piece that allows you to come back to the office or even while you're still in your truck on site to create this really great report that you can send out immediately. And I think that there's this old saying that an hour in the field is an hour in the office. If I'm out on site for an hour, it's going to take me about an hour to then collect that information and disseminate it, if not more. And so that automated reporting piece kind of gets that task off of your to-do list such that you can stay focused on other critical, things that need attention. So, Yeah, I think that, and so we built that internally for the firm. I think, candidly, the moment I saw it wireframed, I knew we had something, and we got that MVP stood up within the firm, and then we all decided, like, hey, this is not an uncommon problem. Like, everyone has this problem. Where am I? What am I looking at? And how do I tell someone else where I was and what I saw? So we spun that out of the firm and started taking it to the market in 2022. So I could probably talk for hours about some of those challenges of innovating in a firm and then spinning it out. But again, just there's no one better suited to evaluate a problem and solve it than those that are in it. And so pretty excited with what we built there.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's such a cool story. I mean, it takes me back a little bit to what we experienced, but I think one of the points that you talked about that is a UI, a process, technology that's familiar to what a user does every single day. And it's amazing still today. Like, you see software and you see technology out there that is not intuitive. It's not easy to use. And like, you can have technology that does amazing things for your industry, but if people aren't using it, then you're not maximizing that value. I know we talk a lot about internally is like, we have to be driving utilization and adoption. And one of the best ways to do that is to have a very intuitive interface, and the reality is today's tech, you should be able to have a user come in, quite honestly, without formalized training, maybe a little onboarding like here and there, but people should be able to come into a UI and pretty much figure out the main aspects of leveraging that tool. And whether it's an accounting package or a CRM package or a site package, is you shouldn't have to go through like detailed training to do it. Now, obviously training and kind of enablement can help you with some of the best practices and some ideas, but I don't know, man, I'm amazed. I mean, we see it in some of the competition that we face, but just being in the technology space and leveraging tech, it's amazing today still that there's still these unfamiliar interfaces that people bring to market. And like, I loved your adage of like, look, like you're looking for a restaurant on a map. I mean, why would that be any different process than what we're doing as far as locating us on a site? Or, hey, we're used to sending text messages, and okay, why would we do anything different than that in the space? I thought that was a cool point that you made.
I go to some of these conferences and they've got, robots doing site visits and things like that. And I think that's great. And we may get there eventually, but we just need tools that solve fundamental problems now, to start to transfer, people from spreadsheets and handwritten notes into collecting organized, accessible information, as opposed to these like massive jumps of like, well, we're just not going to hire anybody, and this dog robot's going to walk around now. And the
dog robot's kind of cool. It's fun to watch. It's a little creepy.
And when the building's collapsed, I want that dog in there instead of
I want the dog in there. I don't want to be in there.
But, kind of like kind of leaning into what Treble is doing. And I think some of the challenges that even SiteMarker has is, if you compare Treble to a Salesforce, Treble is very curated from a UI standpoint, much easier to use, intuitive to your point. Salesforce is like a cobweb, right? And you have to have experts in place to kind of build it and make it work like it needs to do. Now, there's a benefit to that in that if you're unwilling to modify a particular process, and I think this is one of the biggest challenges that the industry has right now, is that we've got tools, candidly better tools than we've ever had before, but it requires firms to commit to a process and, to your point earlier, best practices, and say and get them off of this. Well, we've always done it this way, and trying to jam a square peg through a round hole. To say, hey, well, if you start to do it this way, the amount of benefit that you'll have here is much greater than whatever, minuscule benefit you think it is to continue doing it the way you used to.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head, and I think, any company kind of gets stuck in their ways sometimes. And I think that's honestly why we see so much, we see in our space, we see Excel and Smart Sheets and these platforms, because it enables the users to take their current process, no matter how good or bad or broken it is, and deploy that current process into a tool that will allow them to do whatever. And to some extent, Salesforce, and love them to death, and they're obviously the underpinning of our Treble product. But out of the box Salesforce is kind of that same thing. It's a moldable piece of clay that allows you to inject your poor processes or your bad habits into a piece of technology. And I think you hit it, is like, when we invest in technology as a business owner or as a user, we should obviously be looking for technology that's not only going to help make our lives easier and automate things and track and centralize data, but technology that's going to deploy best practices that's going to help us grow. And if you can find a piece of tech that can do kind of the fundamental components, but then also teach you better ways of doing things. And I think that, your company and my company, and the fact of being vertically focused, we primarily work with kind of mid-market AEC firms, and it's kind of like multi-location, multi-divisional AEC firms, and kind of in your space, like heavily being focused on kind of the site and the civil, it gives us the ability to be hyper focused on the customer and learn many of best practices and worst practices, and then help further deploy that into our technology. So, I feel like our ability to innovate and help change the industry by being more focused is a really good thing. And I think that, when you're talking to, tech firms and people in the SaaS and the equity space and and others, I mean, they really like the vertical SaaS play because it can solve problems at a much more exponential rate. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting topic. It's something we've seen a ton of, and I think that our job, and one of the topics we talk about internally and with our customers, is that when you deploy our technology or SiteMarker or any technology, is really viewing it as a journey and not a destination. You talked about going from manual writing on a piece of paper to a robot in the field. I mean, that is a major transition and a cultural shift and a technology shift, and there's so much processes, and sometimes we've seen companies try and jump too far into the kind of the bleeding tech. And that jump sometimes can backfire because you have poor user adoption. You're making such a significant change. And so really, when we talk about this like journey, not a destination concept with our customers, it's like, okay, let's have a vision of where we're going in the future, right? Let's envision the robot dog that's out there and all of this sort of stuff. And let's make decisions about our technology stack today that will ultimately enable us and empower us to achieve that mission one day. But before we get there, let's just attack like the top 2 or 3 biggest pain points that we have. And then if we think about this as not I'm buying something, I'm implementing it, and I'm done, but as opposed to I'm investing in a platform that's going to help me continue to grow and scale, and I can do more and more with it. And SiteMarker is going to continue to add features for my, features and benefits and workflows. They're going to help me grow. I might not use them on day one, but I know that platform is going to be there. Or, Treblehook's going to continue to deploy and do more things for my business. So I just think that some companies get too far ahead of themselves. And, one of the things we've seen is implementations take longer. You're tackling too many large problems at any one time without just deploying the tech, getting it into the business, kind of getting those new motions built, then adding a new habit, and then adding a new habit, and adding a new habit over time, so that as you progress through this journey, you ultimately can get to the robot dog, but you're not trying to go from here to there kind of on day one.
Yeah. And I think that best practice of onboarding technology is inversely related to the amount of technology and solutions that are just coming into the AEC space at this point. And I think that kind of inverse relationship will ultimately, or maybe as an engineer, the resulting vector of those two things will be how fast the industry kind of begins to adopt. Because I think there's this mindset that needs to change from a leadership standpoint of what is it like, to your point, where do we want to go, and having a path there, and then being very diligent about taking those steps forward. And this industry, the AEC space, like I don't know about you on the sales side of stuff, like people are super busy. I mean, like are understaffed. We're not generating enough engineers out of the schools, and there's more work to be done than there are professionals to do it. And so their capacity to evaluate and carve out part of their operating budget to dedicate people to making those decisions and walking them through that product is challenging at times, regardless of how easy your platform is. It's like, man, they're covered up for a month. We're like, well, can we get on the calendar in 6 weeks? And then even then you get them for 30 minutes, but they don't have a task force associated with like having an internal champion, people that are going to set the process. You can have people saying, I'm the process manager, but if you don't have buy-in from leadership and the right person to help curate what the best practice is, or convey, hey, treble hook is the best. These are best practices. It's already inside the system. Let's start using that. Let me help you translate that best practice to what we're currently doing and the value of adopting this instead. I think those are some, candidly talking from one CEO to the next, those are challenges inside the sales cycle, is being able to identify groups that are dedicating resources to kind of solving those problems. Because I would imagine some bulk of the industry, the firms in the industry don't have dedicated resources to start to that are dedicated to standardizing processes and improving them.
Yeah, no, and it's funny. I thought about maybe think about a conversation I had yesterday with our sales team. And so we're talking about our customer acquisition team that's trying to go out and, talk to potential customers. And, they were just talking about like, man, it's so hard to get people on the phone, and it's hard to get people to give me time to talk. Like, what's the deal? And I'm like, man, it's even after we sell the customer something, it's hard to get time for the implementation. I mean, the reality is that our customers are just like crazy busy. And our company's busy, your company's busy. We all have a lot going on. And so I think there's something there that says, how do you, I think for a tech firm, this is why it's, kind of the inbound and the outbound component is, when somebody has time to search for a product, how do you make sure that your product or solution is being found? And that's a whole different conversation. But then on the flip side is, if we have pain points that we're seeing in the industry, how do we get out there and make sure that we can identify those and let these customers know that there's a challenge? And I think you're exactly right. And actually, maybe one question I would just generally have for you, and I'm just trying to think about like the audience that might be listening would be, they're probably execs in AEC or even manufacturing firms or people that are trying to figure out how to kind of digitally transform their business. They know they have a problem. They know there's a better way. Their team is running at 100 miles an hour and they're trying to figure out a way to slow down in order to address the tech stack. They've got to go look through all the technology that's on the marketplace and all the hundreds of websites and the thousands of emails that they're getting. And like, maybe let's chat about that for a second. Like what are some best practices out loud, like for an executive of like the engineering firm like that you were at prior, or even think about me at TPM or some of our customers, like how do you figure that out? Do you start with the most critical problem? Do you start in a smaller subsegment of the business? How do you find the right partner? Do you just Google search everything? Do you talk to your peers? And then like once you select who you believe to be the right partner, like how do you dedicate the resources? Like how do you get it effectively deployed so that it can get in the business? I mean, like just kind of chat about that for a second. What do you?
Yeah, I mean, I suspect a lot of the industry, tries to put committees or think groups together within, these are resources that have full-time deliverables and jobs within the company. And, maybe they let them carve out a little bit of time to kind of evaluate potential solutions. I think as an executive, it's critical to keep those groups very small. I think from an engineering standpoint. Like engineers are very analytical, and if you get too many of them in one room together, you'll never get down to a solution. It'll take months or years. And so I think that from a
which is
leadership,
the opposite of a bunch of sales leaders. You get them together and they've got 6,000 ideas and try and tackle all of them. So and immediately. So it's
exactly. And so I think it's keeping the decision maker. Well, first, it's keeping the evaluation group small. I do think that tackling smaller problems first are ideal, but certainly scoping out, to your point earlier, what's the end game here? But one thing I think that's probably a challenge for a lot of people is empowering that group to make the decision. And so I think that making, maybe even leading with a little bit of a heavy hand at times, which might be against the culture of the company, or a number of things that bring, existing decision matrices in place, right? It's like, we're going to empower this group who are experts in this space. We believe they're the best examples of project managers, and and we're going to, even though they may not be corporate leadership or team leaders, whatever it is, these are our highest performers and they're best suited to evaluate a system, to then also empower them to make that decision. And then also, again, continue to carve out time to being internal champions, help with the onboarding and training and things like that. I think that's just because not every individual or leader is best suited to help make those decisions. And so I think kind of looking down the ranks to understand who's the best at maybe each one of these roles, where the pain point lives, and empowering that individual to make decisions. It could be antagonistic to, corporate structure.
And it's interesting. I think, it's kind of the groundswell effort versus the kind of top down. And, the reality is you probably need to some extent both. I mean, I think that an effective leader, should not have to make every decision and in any business, and be able to delegate that, especially have good people down to the teams that know the challenge the best. And so I think that, that regard for a CEO to say, hey, look, I know we have a challenge. You're telling me we have some problems. I support us pursuing this challenge. And hey, team, I want you all to help go find and procure and find the right solution for our business. And I think culturally also that helps give those people buy-in to solving the problem as opposed to just kind of pushing it down their throat. And so I think, one thing is if you have that team making the solution recommendation and, vetting out the vendors, and they've got buy-in and they're ready to deploy it. Also then making sure that the leadership team is not only bought into it, but can also be a part of the deployment. I think
absolutely critical. I mean, because that is absolutely critical. And to your point, it does take a leader being willing to kind of usurp some power and say, listen, just because I'm the CEO doesn't mean I need to make every decision. Empower those thoroughbreds below you to run. And so it does. It's a bit of a sandwich, if you will, top down and bottom up. And I think that, kind of pulling this back up a little higher level of like, how do you get in front of them? How do you get them to pick up a phone call? How do you make them aware of your product? I had a really interesting conversation with a CEO of TestFit, Clifton Harness. And, it was if you think about long form content like this versus short form content, it was fascinating to hear his thoughts on, Instagram is a great platform. LinkedIn is a great platform to just get in front of people for 15 seconds, because the time that, our attention spans, I feel like are going down. And just to make people aware of like, hey, we exist. And then just continue kind of living in that, in their space for 15 seconds a clip, such that when the problem becomes realized, that you're top of mind when it comes to solving that. It's kind of an interesting approach.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's just being present. And you talked about it before. Is like your technology is focusing on deploying solutions, but in the means that people are used to consuming it, right? And finding the restaurant on the map and texting. It's kind of the same thing. It's we need to be present. Site marker, treble hook, TPM, whatever. Like our companies need to be present in the platforms that our customers are in, right? And so whether it's Instagram or whatever, and not serving up ads and generic marketing information, and but valuable content. And I think like that's why this platform is such a cool thing. Like this conversation today is not you and I trying to sell anything. It's just having a cool conversation about things that our business leaders and customers are facing. And hopefully if our customers can align with us and the way that we think, they might be interested in working with our businesses over time. So yeah.
Let me dive into that a little bit more. Like how important for you, for treble hook, or really across TPM is that personal relationship? I would imagine both of us are kind of scaling companies out of the Southeast. And if we were to look at kind of our book of business, I would imagine most of it are people that are kind of in the Southeast. I mean, we've likely both have customers nationwide, but I'm interested to kind of hear your thoughts on kind of the handshake, in-person meetings, and the value of that.
Yeah, it's a great question, man. I think like I'll answer it selfishly. I think selfishly for me, like I'm a relationship driven individual, and both of us serve in the AEC space, which is we're relationship driven business. And I think about like a business developer who's one of our personas that we work with, and a business developer in an AEC firm is not banging out 100 phone calls behind a desk every day. They're out networking, they're attending conferences, they're going to lunches, they're meeting with various people. So I just think like in the AEC space in particular, that because there's so many different companies and so many different parties that are involved, and quite honestly, there is a physical aspect to the building and the launch and these companies coming together. I just think that industry is wired to relationships, and I think that we have tried to deploy, call it SaaS scaling best practices of lead generation and things that we can run across the country and digital and stuff, and they don't work that much. I mean, what works, I mean, for us is developing a relationship with a CEO, and he got a reference from another CEO that we work with, or we reach out and we're like, hey, heads up, we're going to be in your area, or hey, we work with the general contractor that's right next door to you, and I know that you all do some work together, like let's have a conversation. And so I think that the challenge that we have to face is being based in the Southeast, and like for instance, I'm working with a large customer in Texas. We developed that relationship completely digitally, but in a very relational fashion. And our first meeting that we have, our first hour-long meeting that we'll have with a client, there's no demos, there's no slide decks. It's literally just chatting. It's like, hey, look, this is what we're about. Let me hear what you're about. If there's an alignment, let's move forward. But the other side, I just kind of so once you kind of land the customer, one of the things that we're kind of working through is with a more complicated business, right? A larger, like this is a $1 billion a year business, multiple locations, lots of parties that are involved. Connecting all of those people early in the implementation is a challenge. Digitally. And so we've been on site with this customer twice as kind of strategic alignment meetings. And then once we establish the alignment, we can execute everything else digitally. So I think the AEC industry is wired for relationships, and I think any company that wants to be successful selling into that has to deploy relational based activities into the way that they work. And I think about like my business development days and in construction, and the first meetings that I would book were, coffees, lunches, and beers. Like I would look out a couple weeks and I'd book out all my coffees, all my lunches, and all my beers, because it was a way to just develop relationships and then infill as you can. So I think it's a challenge, especially in the tech space when you're trying to scale with inside salespeople and be super efficient and leverage technology, still not losing sight of the relational aspect. So yeah, I'm curious, what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we call it a network effect is the sharing of our reports and people putting their hands on them and be like, oh, this is great. And, that person's using this, then it's probably good for us. And I like the way this thing looks. So we've definitely had a number of clients come through, existing clients. And I'm interested to see where, with the advent of AI and AI agents, and I think effectively civil engineering, potentially AEC space as a whole, very much a lot of it will become commoditized in that sizing pipes and grading and construction drawings will become a commodity as we begin and continue to push and automate those processes. And effectively, the firms are going to end up having to lean back into, or continue to lean more heavily into, building relationships to win work. I think that if technology will actually require you to be a little bit more hands-on than we had, or a lot, maybe it's allow us to be more hands-on than we had been. And I think from a CEO running a company and automated outbound, and I think that the handshake, the in-person meetings are absolutely invaluable to kind of continuing to nurture the relationship, to say, hey, I'm here for you and with you. And I want you to feel comfortable reaching out to me. But to your point is like, how do you end up scaling that nationwide? I'm sure both you and I have big aspirations for Treble Hook and SiteMarker, and how do you scale relationships like that? And so, part of me wonders is that if you're certainly on the CEO side of stuff, like you and I are about the same age and we're interacting with people, similar ages, we really appreciate those handshakes and those in-person meetings. Part of me wonders if some of the younger people coming into the industry, the relationships built out of Instagram snips, right? Like, it's like, oh, this is part of my feed every day. And I kind of enjoy that. I think ultimately it's still humans like to interact with humans and don't want to just be sold a product, even as great as something like SiteMarker and Treble Hook. So I think it's kind of a fun little balance in this industry because I was looking on, I was on Sequoia. Someone had sent me a screenshot of problems, like 3 tranches of problems being solved, particularly inside of capital investment. It was a hair on fire problem, which is, you can imagine, a ton of solutions coming in to try to address that problem. There's these like very visionary solutions that are, we want to colonize Mars, right? And then there's these hard rock problems. They're like, this is just life. In the AEC space, I'm stuck with this spreadsheet. And you tend on the hard rock problems not to have a ton of competitors in there because people just think they're stuck with it. I think SiteMarker is one of those things, is like, well, I've got to visit this site again and walk somebody through it because I have no way to convey where I was, and I need to show them where all the curb cracks are or something like that. And I think that from the finance side of the house, like, there's a lot of people who love, to your point earlier, right at the beginning of the podcast, people love spreadsheets. It's like they can protect it, they own it, they can share it.
Comfortable.
Yeah. So, I think it's all kind of an interesting to see where it goes and how you kind of penetrate the market.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, just in the tech space, and just thinking about our company and our peers, and we tend to focus on kind of these mid-market companies, right? So not the major corporate owned, equity backed companies. I mean, we're going after firms, and quite honestly, in the AEC space, they're typically mostly privately held, whether it be by a team of principals, a couple individuals, but you very seldomly talk to a large general contractor or a mid-market architect, and they're owned by some private equity firm. And I think those types of individuals like to work with companies like that. And I think that there's an appreciation for you and I, and the fact that, we're bootstrapping our SaaS businesses, and we're working for, trying to get grants and stuff to help accelerate our growth. But, we're the predominant owners and leaders of the business. And I think that that's one thing in the AEC space that can help out dramatically, is that you have a customer base that is privately held. And when they hear about a peer or a partner in any regard that's also privately held, there's a deeper relationship that can occur, as opposed to a private equity backed business, working with a venture backed business. And, in the TPM space, we work in the manufacturing space a lot. And you don't see that nearly as much in manufacturing. It's a lot more corporate, where they have hired individuals to be executing the plan, as opposed to people that actually have like an emotional connection with the business. And I think that you and I have an emotional connection with our business. And I think it comes out in the way that we lead and the way that we work with our customers and our branding. And I think that people identify with that. And I think that's one of the things that I know for our business as we grow, like we want to make sure we maintain that, and I've heard this before with our competitors and others is, oh, they were doing a great job when so-and-so, the founder, was there. But then he just sold out, or she just sold out the business, and now it's owned by some big corporate whatever. And the delivery changes and the relationship changes, and now it's more of a machine. And I still think today, and you kind of spoke about it, no matter how advanced technology is, when there's really core solutions that we're leveraging, and this is different than like logging on to Amazon or ChatGPT or whatever, but when there's core solutions that we're leveraging in our business, knowing that there's a face and a person and a relationship and a backing, no matter how big that business is, but knowing that you have a partner that's on the other side of that piece of technology, I think is so important. And like we talk about that, like when you invest in our platform, like, yeah, you're getting a great, like best in class, like CRM solution, purpose built for your business, but you're also getting us. You're getting a relationship and a partnership, and that blend is so important to provide like amazing technology, but also a really good partnership.
I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on how do you scale you and I, right? Like, I get upset when people are like, oh, well, this is your baby. This is not my baby. I believe in what we're doing, and I'm certainly very passionate about it. But I feel like that the idea of that this is my baby is that I have to make every decision, and that I'm the only one that can care for it. How do you scale that passion, your belief, that relationship across new hires within Treble Hook?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would tell you that we don't necessarily have a great process. Just the way that I lead, just in general, is I'm like a heavy communicator. Like, so new hire lunches that we have, and being involved with the team, I drop into our like technical huddles and our product development huddles just to make sure my voice is being heard. Because I feel like you and I and the CEO of the business, you see and hear things with a different lens. And everybody in the business, it's not a hierarchy of who's over who. It's just everybody has a certain role to fulfill. And I feel like our role is to be able to see things with a different perspective. So I think our presence is super important in the team's aspect. And I met with a leader, CEO of a very large business, who's a good friend of mine out of Utah. And, he looked at his job as the CEO is to just constantly be reinforcing the message, the vision, where we're going and why. And sometimes I think leaders, we fall back on, well, hey, you went through onboarding. I told you where we're going and understanding why that's important. And, I told that to you one time. There's a video you can watch. And so I think you're good. I think the reality is like we have to constantly be reinforcing the message to our teams so that they are constant in alignment. Because when they get in the weeds or they get in a challenge, they can become a little bit in disarray with the message. And so always bringing them back. And I feel like I'm being repetitive, but I've watched it work time and time again. And so I've just said, hey, look, I'm going to keep preaching this message. I'm going to keep talking about it and reinforcing the why, even if my team is like rolling their eyes. And I think the other thing you mentioned, just to kind of dovetail in there, like I look at my time right now and, there are things that I'm doing today that I should and will over time delegate out to other individuals. And just because I know how to do it doesn't mean that I should be doing it. But then I look at where I'm best suited to be spending my time. And, I've had some great conversations with a handful of C-level folks at some of these large customers of ours, and that relationship building can't be delegated. My understanding of their problem, because I sit in a very similar seat, I can understand their problem differently than my team can. So I've got to be able to take that problem and figure out a way to translate that into execution and accountability amongst our team. And so I think the way that we can continue to scale over time, at least in kind of the short run, is, what are the things that we don't need to be working on and doing, and how do we figure out a way to get those off our plate so that at least short term, we can spend more of our time doing the things that are important. And, right now we don't have thousands of customers, but, we've got a good bit of customers, and I know, most of them, but when we have 1,000 customers, it's going to be so much harder to scale those relationships. And I think we're going to have to look at those relationships a little bit differently and a little bit more, not programmatic, but figure out a way to have multiple layers and other people that can understand the challenge and disseminate it. And, I think that's probably one of the biggest things is when, I hire a super sharp technical person, I cannot expect them to go sit down with a CEO and identify what the challenges that CEO is facing, because they've never been in that spot before. Whereas I have, so I know it. Like when somebody's like, "Hey, I'm having problems with this," I'm like, "I got it." Like we're doing the exact same thing. So, I just think that that's a challenge we're both going to have to face. And I think our job of just proliferating the messaging of where we're going and why till we're blue in the face has got to be a major priority. And then figuring out a way to shed the things off of our plate that aren't, the major priorities or things that we can hire people to help us do so that we can spend the bulk of our time doing the most impactful things for our company. But shoot, man, it's hard, dude. I was in Trouble Hook earlier today. I created a field for a customer, and I'm sitting, I'm like, what am I doing, man? Like, this is craziness. I've got people that can help me do this, but I love it, man. But it's something that we'll have to learn and grow with.
Yeah. Well, we call that dog fooding, using your own product and making sure you know how to do it. And it's kind of funny to hear you say like scaling, or being a little bit more programmatic around that many relationships. And in many ways, that's what Treble Hook kind of allows you to do is put a team of BD people together and understand all the conversations they're having. When was the last time it happened? And kind of help scale BD across many people, as well as project management for that matter. And so, I think that if I'm being candid, I'm probably guilty of shedding maybe too quickly at times. I've got a ton of trust, and I'm not implying that you don't, but I think I'm probably guilty of trusting somebody to run maybe before they are. And I agree. I think the ability for me to convey to the team and translate, if you will, I try to do that every day to say, this is the customer said this, and this is what it means for us, such that over time, everybody understands kind of where we're going, and why we're doing what we're doing. I'll pause for a second to ask this question back to you. How important is it for you when hiring people into your company that they came from the industry? And do you find it more beneficial to hire within the industry because it's kind of less of a ramp up, or do you feel like you can bring someone from outside the industry and kind of scale them up quick?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I think like the unicorn that we're after is somebody that comes from industry that has implemented, in our space, like a CRM or pursuit platform. They're hyper in tune with, software and tech. They know what the future looks like, and so they can help convey that. There's not many of those folks out there, right? And so there's people that understand the problems of the industry, and they understand the challenges that they face, and how to develop relationships, and how projects come together. And I think that you have to have, some level of industry expertise coming into your firm, and in order to make sure you're solving the right problems. But I also think, when you're trying to change an industry to some extent, like you and I are, bringing people from the outside that have outside perspectives of how other industries and other applications, and they've seen the robot dog, they've seen kind of the future. And they're also very technically astute. Like our product, the underpinning, the engine is the Force.com, the Salesforce engine. So having people that are experts in Salesforce to some extent is a key need of folks in our industry. Well, there's not a lot of people that have Salesforce experience from the AEC industry. So I think the ideal blend, and honestly, one of the things that we like I bring, and our company brings a lot of AEC industry experience, but a lot of the people we've brought on the Treble Hook team have brought more of the technical and outside the industry experience, and you can tell there's a gap. And honestly, this is one of the reasons why, with some strategic customers, I need to make sure that I'm involved, or a few people are involved, because we have to blend that industry expertise with the technical acumen. So, I think my thought is, right now, I just want to get really sharp, motivated people. And I think that if we get sharp, motivated people that are from outside the industry, I do think we can teach them some of the nuances and the things to understand to help them do their job better. But also, I think over time, and this is an area of growth for our company, I think that we're gonna end up hiring some people from the industry, so that we have this blend, and then these people can come and team together. And one of the things I've been working on, I'm curious how you're doing this, is, so, and I've got all sorts of questions on AI and ChatGPT and all those things in a bit, but, we'll have an amazing meeting with an executive, and there's nuggets of information. There's us problem solving and diagnosing the challenge. There's the customer telling us the pain points. We used to just feverishly write notes, and we would make those notes, and they would be in that client file, and we could always reference those. Well, those are that's gold, like absolute gold. And so one of the biggest things that we've done recently as kind of a mandate inside of our company is every single meeting gets recorded, 100%. Sales discovery, demo, discovery meeting, implementation meeting, update meeting, every single meeting gets recorded, and we are working on the back end to be able to congregate all those transcripts from all the different conversations that we're having, and then leveraging AI and ChatGPT to extract out these nuggets, so that we can then start providing better training for our team. Because it's like on the job training, or I've got to sit down and teach folks, but these conversations are gold, they're absolute gold. And so if we're having those, just finding a better way to repurpose that to better train our teams is something we are hot and heavy in the middle of doing. And because we've got this killer content from these conversations, and we have not in the past done a really effective job of repurposing that content for something usable that our team can leverage.
Yeah, that reminds me of, I've had a couple just killer meetings in person, and because there wasn't a virtual element, I didn't record it, and it was oh gosh, that would have been great. I've got one of my team members is just. He's like an encyclopedia. He remembers everything. He's like AI sitting in person. And I've leaned on that a bunch in those scenarios. But yeah, I think things like Read AI are a fantastic tool to kind of collect that knowledge and then rip that thing down into GPT and start to train a model to help you kind of understand and kind of distill down a number of conversations kind of into one.
Yeah, it's going to be game changing, man. It's a really interesting, and we've been kind of playing. We're kind of in this playground space of AI where we're just letting our team play right now. And I probably, not with our product, but for internal tools, I'm probably leaning a little deeper into not worrying so much about like, security and all that, and just giving and leaning deep into letting our teams just kind of figure out what's working, and starting to then, figure out, okay, now that we kind of understand how things are working, what's a couple core applications that we can leverage to really start amplifying the business. So curious on your side, like what's kind of the top one or two things you're seeing in the AI space, either for your company or kind of what's coming down the pike? And that'd be probably a good finishing conversation to wrap up on an AI topic.
Yeah. I mean, I use AI 15, 20 times an hour for sure. For all kinds of stuff, certainly just drafting emails and just making them flow correctly, make sure we're hitting the points. Definitely downloading transcripts and kind of pushing them into AI to help kind of again, like I said, distill down kind of main points. But we use it. I know our developers are using GitHub's Copilot, Vercel, v0.dev is a fantastic front end AI tool where you can literally just chat with it and upload. Man, this is crazy. This is actually the engineering firm here. We hand sketched a modal, like just a screen of like, this is what we want it to look like, uploaded it into VO, and it spat out almost perfect modal with a drop down menu, clickable radio buttons, and it also codes the back end of it. So there's some pretty incredible development tools that have changed who we hire, not how many people we're hiring. It just changes who we hire. And so the whole team's using it across all of our body of work, from sales to operations to the development team. It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think, like on our side, we've got just playing with all sorts of stuff. I was working on, we're thinking about new ways to onboard and train customers. And instead of doing these big training classes, we call it in-app guidance, but, just kind of giving them thoughts and guidance as they're going through the product is kind of a quick training. And so we've been concepting this idea of having like a character named probably Hook is what we're talking about, but a character or a voice that even in podcast style, right, we can have, hey, look, welcome to Treble Hook. Like, I want to make sure you understand, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm going to give you a quick tour around. This is what projects do. This is what proposals do, blah, 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 blah. And so I was playing around with a couple 11.io and a couple other tools a couple weeks ago. And, I recorded my voice and it created an AI agent with my voice. I then went in and I went to, ChatGPT, and I was like, hey, I want to create a quick onboarding podcast between myself and Hook. And I wanted to kind of talk about these things. And so it wrote out this podcast. I threw it back in 11.io, and it's me and this like other, this female voice just talking back and forth. And I was like, holy cow. And then we started testing out some video stuff where you can take, a video avatar and load in content. And so it's really interesting. I'm actually not real today. This is actually my avatar talking to you, Landon. So
I actually teed off at 10:30.
Are you the guy with the he's got that green screen backpack behind him and he walks around, with the section?
Yeah, exactly. I love that one. That's fantastic.
But I think it's going to be cool. I think like what I encourage people to do, and you're probably doing the exact same thing, is just, it's moving so fast. Get in the game. Like test, just play, test.
That goes back to dedicating resources to explore. And, I think some people kind of do it on their own time. They do it out of, rushed in a place of need. And then it's kind of this segmented effort. And there's a bunch of segmented efforts. And I think that, across a company, I don't know, maybe this is AI hour, 11 o'clock on a Friday, everyone can just play around. And what's the bulk of that effort? My wife's, at the College of Charleston in a leadership role, and she's, there was this kind of AI effort. And man, after, a semester, what these students came up with was fascinating. I mean, I think as CEOs, one of my mentors had told me, he's like, building a company is like a million little tugs in one direction, and making sure everyone's pulling in that direction. And then all of a sudden, at some point in your career, you're going to stop and look around and be like, holy crap, we got a company here. And in so many ways, I think that, the challenges of a CEO or of any effort, whether it's AI or not, is to make sure everyone's kind of pulling in that same direction, having a vision of where you want to go. Otherwise, kind of everyone's getting, spreading in the wrong direction. So I did want to lean back into one thing that you had mentioned there. I kind of started this was like hiring motivated people. I think one of the things we had talked about on our first run on this was the importance of like, how do you motivate people that aren't the founder of the company, and how do you hire motivated people? What's motivation look like across a breadth of a career? And I think one of the things that's super important that through the interview process at SiteMarker, it's absolutely critical, in my opinion, that you have personal goals outside of work, because it's the achievement of those goals. And whether it's your faith, your relationship with your family, aspirations to become a single handicap golfer like myself, do an Ironman, whatever it is that those aspirations end up fueling the means with which you can accomplish those, which is your work. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on kind of like what motivates you. How do you, from a selection standpoint, how do we identify motivated people?
Yeah, man, gosh, that's great. That's a great question. I think that, I think personally, for me and my coach that I work with is a guy named Milt Lauder, and he's an amazing person. I've worked with him for a number of years, and he worked with me to document that, and so I created an individual purpose statement for me to help me have a vision of where I want to go. And, I'm a happy, healthy, family-centered leader, that inspires growth and organizations, teams, and individuals through bold humility, perspective, and grace. And so we created this statement together that really talks about where I want to go. And so it grounds me to make sure that every day, I'm pursuing those things. And, am I being happy? Am I being healthy? Am I leading and inspiring? Am I doing so in a bold manner, but with also perspective and grace? Is faith a component of that? And so that was really groundbreaking for me. And for me, it comes back to one of my favorite quotes, and it's one from Gandhi that's really talking about achieving your destiny, and that your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny. And actually, sorry, the first thing is your beliefs. So beliefs become thoughts. So to get wherever you want to get to, it first has a foundation of what you believe, and then what you think, speak, act, all the way down into your destiny. And so I think having that kind of North Star of what you want to accomplish is super important. And we've kind of taught that here in our business. And I think that, on the motivation side, I think some of it's wiring, man. Like, I think that, when you do things you love, it's easy to get fired up and motivated about it. And when you do things you don't love, it's harder to get kind of motivated and inspired. So I think, one thing when you're hiring people is finding people that want to do the work. Like, they're excited about the company. They're excited about the vision. You're not asking a salesperson to fill out spreadsheets. You're not asking a tech person to make, calls, or an accounting person to do what have you. Is like, putting people in the right seats so that they can ultimately do what it is that they love to do will be individually motivating. And, I think that there's some people that just aren't individually motivated. I think that's why, to your point, like through the interview process, just uncovering like, hey, what's up? Where are you going? Like what inspires you? What do you do outside of work? Like, what do you do? What do you do for fun? And what do you want to do here that like you wake up every day and get fired up about? And like, hey, by the way, like, what do you do in your job that you hate today? I'll never forget this. I had a guy, he still works for us. He's one of our operations directors and an amazing person. He got hired as a business developer, a telemarketer, a sales development rep here at TPM. And I sat down for his annual performance review. I'll never forget. His name's Josh. He's awesome. We're sitting in the conference room, and I'm like, all right, brother, what's your favorite thing about your job? And he's like, man, I love it when I get to like dissect the lead conversion rates in the spreadsheet, and I get to really go through and figure out like what's working and what's not. And I was like, bro, that's not what an SDR salesperson would say. Normally you'd be like, man, I love when I talk to people and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you're telling me that, that you love the spreadsheet analytics. You might not be in the right seat. And so, man, we over a couple months, we moved him out of sales development. We moved him into operations, and he took over our contract management process. And now he's leading, as a director, leads our kind of purchasing and operations order management, and does a great job. And I just think that like there's so many aspects of our companies that require different skill sets, and when you put people in positions to do the work that they love, they have a higher propensity to succeed. But I also think that's the CEO's job to continue to keep them going. Because sometimes, it's Thursday afternoon at 4:00 and you're just kind of worn out on the week. And I think that's where we and our team and our peers can come and rally around us, and why the culture is so important. But yeah, it's tough, man. So I think, I probably threw up on your answer here with a lot of different ideas, but like, I think that's definitely being clear about where you want to go and what's important to you will give you kind of a guiding star of how to live your life. And then, the reality is that everybody's individually motivated to do something, right? And so finding things at work that align with their individual motivations, or, hey, man, you love to play golf? Well, sweet, dude. Like, let's crush a couple cool deals, and I'll take you to play golf. And so there's a tie of the work effort to what it is they love to do personally. But I think it just comes back, honestly, to that connection, man. I mean, you and I talked about it. I mean, you do a great job in your business, and I think we do decent in ours. Is just the personal connection, the culture, the communication, the inspiration, like just being a part of something fun. Like, nobody wants to be a part of a losing team. Everyone wants to be a part of a winning team, especially winners, right? And so how do we as CEOs create a winning team that people want to be a part of, So, well, I'm curious how you'd answer that question.
Oh man. Well, your quote, your Gandhi quote reminded me of one of my favorite quotes is Ellen John Sirleaf. She said, "If your dreams aren't big enough, or if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough." And I kind of look back at my career and SiteMarker and what that kind of meant. Like, should we do this? I've never spun a company out. I've never fundraised before. I've never set up a sales process. And there's definitely been some sleepless nights where you're just staring at the ceiling and like. In hindsight, that's kind of like, those are the ingredients of just like a really tasteful life, if you will. And I would hope that, everyone that comes to work for me has got big dreams. And I think, to your point, from a selection standpoint, as a CEO, aligning what those dreams are to as best as possible to the mission of your company, their specific roles, is really critical. So, yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, though. And, they call it work for a reason. And, there's a grind. And I think for us as smaller software companies kind of, entering the market or in the early stages of market entry, we've got to pull really hard. And the effort that we're making now could provide the means for you to accomplish whatever it is you want to do outside of work, if you will. I think making sure that they tie that, whether it's immediate or not, right? Like close a deal, play golf on Friday, or hey, if we work for an extended period of time and just strain through this effort for 2, 3, 4 years, we've got the ability to make life-changing value to our customers and to us personally. So I think making sure that they understand what it is that we're doing there, but then on a daily basis, I'll never forget. So at one point I was the only licensed civil engineer in the state of South Carolina that was also an AutoCAD certified expert. And back in those days, I'd go running and I'd literally think about AutoCAD. I'd think about solving, like, how do I create a better corridor? How do I grade this differently? And I still take that to, today, when I run, I solve problems. I'm usually thinking about work, but in a positive light, not like, I don't like, XYZ. It's like, how do I problem solve? And I do that in my moments of kind of not behind a desk. So I think, trying to identify those people that are always chewing on the problem is the goal there. But
yeah, I think you hit, that's awesome kind of perspective. And I think that, it makes me think about that we all need rest too. Like as a leader, as a individual contributor, like we have to give ourselves time to be human and to rest and reset. We can't just be in the grind all the time. So, here, I got a question for you and then we can kind of wrap up. What is the last thing that you searched or asked ChatGPT?
That's a great question here. Let's go look, man. The last thing I ask it for, dude. So I asked GPT this morning so we're a map-based platform, and I was messing around with our app this morning, and you can zoom so far out that you just see our whole globe. And I started thinking, well, if we have aspirations to colonize Mars, there's going to be a lot of projects that happen on Mars. And how do we communicate from Earth to Mars about what is needed and where, and just project management on Mars? And so I asked them if Mars had been fully mapped, if there were EPSG datum codes for it, and what tile sets I might be able to leverage to create site marker on Mars. Legitimately.
Oh my God, dude. How awesome is that? You'll have to send me the response afterwards. I'm like just morbidly curiosity into, what that would be. Oh my gosh, that is so cool.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to redirect that back to you. And I may have.
I can't look at my computer. I think so. I did my schedule has been pretty nuts recently, and so I haven't been able to exercise at a consistent cadence like I've wanted to, and I need that. And so I built a custom GPT, which is called Chris's Vitality Guide, and so it's got like all my DNA stuff in there and my results from physicals and my Whoop stuff, and like it's got all my stuff right in there. And so this was last night. I was dictating to it in the car, and I was like, all right, I got to figure out a schedule, and it's wanting me to do, VO2 max work, but also zone 2 cardio. And I'm great at VO2 max work. I'm not great at zone 2 cardio. And so I was like, all right, I need to figure out if I can work out on Saturdays and Sundays, and my kids' school opens late on Monday morning, so I can get up early in the morning Mondays, and I think I can probably get a Wednesday or Thursday in. How should I program that, and what would that look like in my thing? And so it spit out. It's like, all right, my like long intense days on Saturday, more of like a zone 2 on Monday. Sunday. Monday was something, and then Wednesday was my strength day. And so I just needed help, like taking the chaos and giving me something actionable that I can like put in place. So I was nerding out on zone 2 and VO2 max. It wasn't as cool as yours, I'm gonna have to say. I like the Mars, the GeoMap.
I didn't mean to upstage you on your own podcast there, but that was a pretty wild hair there.
I'm just trying to scale our company right now across the United States. You're not even thinking globally. You're thinking like, is it universally or something? So,
yeah, universally, for sure.
Whatever the world is. So, well, dude, thanks for taking some time today. Like our first conversation was awesome. I think this one was even better, and I'm glad all the tech and stuff worked. And you're doing some awesome stuff at SiteMarker, and I'm so excited to keep the relationship going. And thanks for hopping on today and chatting. And yeah, excited to keep in touch, brother.
Man, likewise. I'll actually be up in your way in a few weeks, so I'll give you a heads up. But always appreciate these conversations. I hope this isn't the last one. I doubt it will be. And, excited to see where you guys are going as well.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. Okay, thanks for joining me on Built with Purpose. If you have enjoyed today's episode, subscribe, share, and leave us a review. It helps more bold leaders find the show. For resources and show notes, visit our website and connect with me, Chris Fay, on LinkedIn. Until next time, keep building great companies, cultures, and legacies with purpose.